Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another edition of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you. We're here. It's draft week. The day of our discontent, something is upon us. I am here, of course, with Jeremy Cohen. Hello, Jeremy. How are you?
Hey, John. Like you said, it's draft week. So great. We get to go into the offseason very soon with more pieces in place, which means less wondering from us. So that'll be nice.
Is wondering not a good quality? I like to wonder sometimes.
It's great. What's awesome is
what?
Yearning. Yearning is a wonderful thing. I love to yearn. The children, they yearn for the minds, and we yearn for knowledge. What can you say?
I genuinely don't know when's the last time that I have truly yearned for something that wasn't a stiff drink after a long day. I definitely yearn for a cocktail at times. I can't say that there's anything else that I have truly yearned for in a while, including anything sports related. But I don't know. Maybe that'll change in the next couple days. We'll see.
Good. I'm sure you yearned for a championship, even if you didn't think that was going to happen this year. You probably yearned for it a little.
Do I yearn for a championship? I don't know that I really want one very badly. Yearning, that's heavy lifting there. So here's what we're going to do today. We have another cap or no cap, which Jeremy has so graciously prepared for everybody. But first, as we kind of already implied, the news reporting, rumor mongering, whatever you want to say, it's out in full force. So we're going to go through some of the news items that have come across our desk as of it is 5:12 p.m. on Sunday evening when you were listening to this. So if there's anything that transpires into the wee hours of Sunday night or Monday morning, you will not hear that. So I'm going to take it one by one, and then Jeremy, I know you are going to save your extended thoughts for a cap or no cap, right?
Or for Cream.
For Cream, which is coming on Tuesday night.
I believe it'll be tonight if you're listening to this, which is Monday.
It is tonight. I have gotten all the things wrong.
That's
so
okay.
Cream is coming your way tonight, Monday night. That's correct. Monday night.
Your mother to those out here. No, just kidding.
So listen, tune in for that live on Knicks Film School YouTube for Jeremy's extended thoughts on the current rumors. But let's go through them now, and I'll probably have a comment or two. So first things first, as per Mark Stein, who has a great Substack that everybody should go subscribe to, according to a trusted source, we should keep an eye on the Knicks as a potential Paul George trade suitor if the All-NBA swingman indeed opts into the final season of his current contract at $48.8 million. I don't want to get too far into the cap reasons why Paul George coming to the Knicks would make eminently more sense as an opt-in and trade as opposed to an opt-out and then a sign-and trade. I will just say that this does not come as a complete shock to me for two reasons. One, Paul George is a very good basketball player, and I think we can debate, if and when the time comes, the merits of Paul George versus Julius Randle or Paul George versus OG Anunoby, which, maybe that's a choice the Knicks will find themselves making. Whatever. But he's really good, and he's malleable, and he's 34, which is the big downside, and he's going to be very expensive. But also, the Knicks have been into Paul George in the past, reportedly. I think Ian Begley reported that last summer. So, if the Clippers aren't willing to pay up, and he doesn't want to go play in the lovely city of brotherly love, why wouldn't the Knicks perhaps have an eye on him? So that's all I have to say, Jeremy.
Well, I'll just say I buy it. I buy the interest that's there. What we've talked about, the points that the Knicks emphasize the most, okay? It's defense, right? You can certainly get that with Paul George. It's catch and shoot opportunities. Paul George has been among the best at those. It's creation, deflections, it's passing and distributing. I mean, you name it. Paul George fits that description. Where he doesn't fit, is the age factor.
Yep.
Certainly older at 34, and the injury concerns where he was healthy last year, and is, you don't have to go back that far. Last year was very much against it for those reasons, and I think a lot of it will hinge upon, will Julius Randle take an extension, and if he will not, that kind of opens up the door for this very conversation. And even if the answer is yes, it's a question of, with the new CBA, how does his salary impact what you're doing? So we can get more into it at a later point, but the quick hitter is, I absolutely buy the fact that they're interested. Maybe not my number one choice, but I get it. And I can't hate on it when you look at fit.
Yeah, I think the like, would you rather have Julius Randle at $38 million a year versus Paul George at $50 million a year? That's an interesting question. I could definitely see someone having just watched these NBA playoffs asking themselves, who fits more in these NBA finals, or who would fit more in these NBA finals or these conference finals? Paul George or Julius Randle, maybe coming down on the side of a healthy, keyword healthy, Paul George. But again, we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. Okay. The center market for the Knicks. So where should we start here? I guess let's pick it up with the Jake Fisher report. Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports commented on both of the Knicks' current centers. On one hand, he said that Isaiah Hartenstein is now generally expected to return to the Knicks, and that has perhaps been impacted by Oklahoma City's acquisition of Alex Caruso. He did not say so explicitly, but Alex Caruso will be due a significant raise in a year. So the notion, potentially, I'm speculating a little bit here, of offering Isaiah Hartenstein a 2-year guaranteed balloon payment, or like 1 year with a second-year player option or something like that, maybe gets a little bit more untenable. He also implied that maybe the Thunder just want to go after a big man who is not going to fundamentally disrupt the kind of how they've structured their team, which is something that you have been harping on for weeks, if not longer, which is why the Oklahoma City thing never made a lot of sense to you. On the flip side, he also said about Mitchell Robinson, and this is something that Ian Begley piggybacked off of, and Fred Katz had a couple comments on his podcast and shoot as well, that the Knicks are basically either, I don't know, the Fisher report made it sound like they were maybe making calls on Mitch. Begley and Katz I took to be more like they're taking calls on Mitch. Either way, the Knicks are seemingly open to discussing Mitchell Robinson and potential trades, and that is the news update there. I'll piggyback off what you just said regarding Paul George. I'm not surprised that they're listening on Mitchell Robinson. And the thing I kept coming back to is, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, Mitchell Robinson as a backup center who's going to make an average of $13.5 million over the next 2 years, that in and of itself, I don't think is the end of the world. I think where the issue comes in is if you're the Knicks and you have to try to account for the fact that this player over the course of his career, you can kind of pencil in he's going to miss 20, 25-ish games somewhere. I mean, this season obviously was a lot more, but somewhere along the way. So is it that not only are you paying Isaiah Hartenstein starter money, not only are you paying Mitchell Robinson more money than any backup, or almost any backup probably in the league, but do you also need to now go out and spend money on a third significant depth piece for when one of those two guys, and in particular Mitch, may not be able to give it a go? And all of a sudden now your center position is getting untenable from a cost-wise. That's the one thing that I thought of when this report emerged. I don't know if that seems like a bridge too far to you, or just generally what your thoughts are.
I don't think it's a bridge too far. When the offseason started, the first thought that I had was, well, I take it Isaiah Hartenstein's coming back, and Mitchell Robinson is making a good chunk of change. And at a certain point, you have to wonder if they're reallocating resources, because maybe you don't want all that money tied up in two centers who can't play with each other. And it just doesn't necessarily compute. And then from there, I kind of softened it. And then the first episode of Cream, I was like, well, I would be shocked. What did I say? It was that I wouldn't be surprised, right? Or that I wouldn't be, can't remember the exact terminology. Point being, I felt like, yeah, there's definitely a possibility that Mitchell Robinson's dealt. I guess in my mind, it really had more to do with the following year. Like if you were to create a scenario where if you're trading Randall on an extension and aggregating Mitch's salary while he's in the last year of his deal, that's where it makes sense. But now with everything being talked about, it feels more like if you are in the position where you can pay Isaiah Hartenstein and you can move Mitchell Robinson for someone to provide depth on the wing if OG Anunoby misses time. And sure, you have Josh Hart. In this case, you have Julius Randle. But a lot can also change. So do you shake things up? And then with, I say this lovingly, I was annoyed that Ian talked about Goga because I was ready to go into the episode of Kareem and be like, here's my sleeper pick, because I haven't really talked much about Goga because he is like, and as you mentioned before, if the Knicks happen to be, if they don't have access to their non-taxpayer mid-level exception, but they do have access to their taxpayer mid-level, you probably sign a center with it. And if the Knicks are going to be in that bracket, he seems like the perfect player where you go out and you replace him. And it's a question of, again, how do you allocate your resources in a salary capped league? In a league where you have to spend X amount and you can't probably spend more than Y, where do you fit those positions? Where do you put those players? And that's then where Goga made perfect sense if you're moving Mitch for someone that helps you on the wing. And I still feel that that's the case. I still feel like based on how it's trending, you look at this team, there are two players on this roster that the Knicks, this front office did not draft, right? Or trade for. Julius Randle and it's Mitchell Robinson. And they brought back Mitchell Robinson. Mm-hmm. But also it didn't make sense to trade him when he was earning next to nothing and an unrestricted free agent. And they needed Julius Randle when he was coming off his All-NBA season. So it may not have been this need to do it right then and there, but having it in your back pocket. And I not been quiet about my concerns with Mitch over the years. It also doesn't mean that I want to give him away. I value him. I value the talent that he has, but it's just all about, can you find someone to replace him for cheaper? And if so, and you can get similar production, and let's be honest here, Mitchell Robinson has not been a beacon of health. So if you're able to turn Mitch and any draft compensation into someone who is healthy, plus you can sign that player like Goga, like it feels pretty evident in that sense.
And I'm happy you phrased it that way, because neither you or I are going to sit here and say that Goga Bitadze is a better player than Mitchell Robinson. That's not the question. The question is whether you'd rather have Goga Bitadze at something less than $5.2 million, or whether you'd have Mitch rather. And it's not even a question of whether you want to, it's whether the cap dictates that you need to. Mitch at 14, I think, this year. And then the last thing on this is
wait, hang on, sorry, real quick. It's not just Mitch at 5 Goga at 5 or Mitch at 14. It's Goga at 5 plus whatever you'd get for Mitchell Robinson versus just Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah.
And then, trying out a wing with a draft pick that we know Tibbs won't trust until maybe a fourth of the way through the season. That's probably very generous.
100%. And then just the last thing, and I'm going to shout out Benji on this one. He has been, I've seen him on Twitter say a couple times since the end of the season, or maybe during the finals even, like, if we have learned nothing else from watching these playoffs, especially with this monster that Boston has built, and we'll see if they'll keep it together for next year at least. We'll see how much longer beyond that they keep it together. But like, other teams are going to try to emulate this to a certain extent. Like, the value of being able to play different ways. And if you have both Mitch and Isaiah Hartenstein on your roster, you are kind of only playing one way. And when Mitch is on the floor, you are really limited to how you can play on offense, because he is just, and these are the concerns that you voiced, not unfairly. He's just a limited offensive player, and that kind of thing gets exploited in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. And then the last thing, Jake Fisher on his podcast, No Cap Room, he's talking to Dan Devine, and basically implied that perhaps OG Anunoby was not pleased with his shot diet, role, whatever, here in New York after he came. But like, Jake, I love Jake Fisher. He's been a guest on the show. Hopefully, be a guest on the show again. He has a way with phrasing where he kind of, allows for varying interpretations. And he even said this. He's like, it depends on who you talk to, and that there are certain people who think that OG Anunoby maybe was not pleased with his role in New York. I am going to go by the gospel of Ian on this one. I will start being worried about OG Anunoby if we see him that he has fired CAA as his agents. As of now, I think this is a lot of gamesmanship and a lot of negotiating in the media, and I'm not too worried yet.
Not too worried either. It's a sort of thing even where, again, I know that $35 million has been floated at his price tag, but I also feel like there's nothing concrete that's showing it. Like, what do we hear? We heard David Aldridge go on Fred Katz's podcast and say, well, OG Anunoby's got the Knicks by the balls.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. He's an unrestricted free agent. He could walk. It would be devastating for the Knicks.
Yeah.
What happens if cap space dries up in other areas?
Yeah.
What happens if Philly says, you know what? We would really just rather trade for Jimmy Butler and get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and call it a day if they have the cap space, which they may not, because that's a lot of money. But like that line of thinking, well, okay, does OG really want to go to San Antonio? Probably not. Like he could go to Orlando, sure, but I also don't quite see the fit there.
I don't see the fit there.
Like you could look at all these various teams, and I just think that OG could get squeezed just enough where that $35 million threshold that, again, maybe it's that. Maybe that's the minimum he signs for, but I just don't understand why that is taken as gospel. You know what I mean? Like sure. When we don't have a lot of comparisons for that level of player, and in what we do, it's not 35 million. Like I expect Aaron Gordon to extend. If he extends, I think the max extension he gets is like $32 million. And we've seen Aaron Gordon produce more offensively and do it for a championship winning team. And yeah. I'm not saying that can't be OG, right? But it's just the prevailing question of why is it that we set it at 35? It just feels like it's, well, I pulled it, and I'm paraphrasing here. Feels like it is kind of rooted from a couple people saying, I've spoken with a few GMs and it's going to be 35 million. But also, what do those GMs benefit from putting it out there? This isn't me saying it with doubt. This is just me openly questioning why that's the number that we have decided is the number for OG. What if it's less? It could be more. Just putting it out there.
Yeah. I think he's going to get paid. I know you think he's going to get paid too. I'm going to save this for when I talk to Fred. I think we're recording tomorrow, but why wouldn't Detroit offer OG Anunoby a max?
They could, but also it seems like they're comfortable losing this year and building it
maybe
on the studs. That's what word seems to be, but who knows if that's the case? Maybe they're just posturing. We'll
see. Anyway, okay. That's it as far as news and rumors, I think, that are directly relevant to the Knicks. I don't think we need to do a deep dive on the Malik Monk extension. Nice deal for both sides. But yeah, that's it. That's it on my end. So I'm going to flip it over to you.
All right. Well, the draft's right around the corner. Got 2 days until then when you're listening to this, if you're listening to it on Monday. So without further ado, let's talk through the NBA draft. Will the Knicks pick in the first round? If you're watching this, you've got the crying Porzingis kid in the top. You've got Leon sleeping bottom right. And you got a milk carton with Trevor Keels. And,
what's he up to?
I wouldn't know. He was the last pick that the Knicks made, and he's not on the team anymore. So that's where the Knicks are at. Let's look at the options, right? Well, of course, there's trading up, there's trading down, there's trading in. Would the Knicks do this, though, with 2 first-round picks already there? I'm inclined to believe that they would not. And then there's trading out of the draft. History of exchanging current draft capital for future draft capital. That's what the Knicks have done, right? They like to trade out and kick the can down the line. Okay. Well, typically, packaging picks and other assets can get you better talent too. That's another way to trade out. It's not just, hey, we'll kick the can down the road. It's we will give up talent and then we will balance that talent with draft capital to get better talent. We're just going to go right in, and I'm going to skip the entire lottery for the Knicks trading up because
we are focusing on opportunities for the Knicks to trade up, and we're going to start at 15.
Yes, we are. It's the Miami Heat, and we can start. This is an easy one, in my opinion. Well, the Heat are near the second apron as things stand right now, but that could change. Trading down certainly would help avoid that. But there's been one trade between the Heat and the Knicks. John, I know you know which one it is.
We've talked about it on the pod, and I forget. Wasn't it involving someone in like the late 90s, early 2000s?
In the mid 90s, a fellow named Pat, who was involved in a trade. That's how it happened. So that's really the only trade the Knicks and the Heat have made in their entire history.
I forget that was actually a trade. I thought he
yes. So I just don't see a trade happening here. Also, over the last few years, the Heat have been really boring when it comes to the draft. They have just taken the players at the slots that they're at.
Yeah, I don't think the Knicks and Heat are going to engage in a trade.
Sixers, they pick 16th. So they've been prioritizing cap space. But just a thought, if you're the Knicks and you're talking with the Sixers, you say, well, look, you got $61 million in cap space. You don't have a lot of players on the roster. It's Joel Embiid. It's likely Paul Reed, Tyrese Maxey's cap hold, probably Kelly Oubre's cap hold. There's just not a lot going on. So you say, well, what if we made a deal, right? See, the 16th pick, the first year of that salary, it's about $4 million, a little over $4 million. And the Knicks' perspective is, well, the combined salaries of 24 and 25, it's $5.5 million. So you're probably thinking, well, that's $1.5 million that gets cut into the Sixers cap space. But it's not quite that much.
Yeah.
Because even though Philly's taking on $1.5 million more, we have to consider roster charges. Since the Sixers don't have a lot of players, this would help them. So it really means that if you subtract a roster charge, which is 1.16 million from that 1.5, turning 24 and 25, or turning 16 into 24 and 25 for the Sixers is really only cutting into their cap space by about $361,000. So the perspective that you're basically saying to Philly is, what if we could give you two for the price of one and you only lose about $360,000? I think it's a compelling offer, but it depends on what Philly is looking for. If Philly wants to squeeze out every ounce of cap space, then this is probably not something they're going to want. But if they were open to doing it, they really wouldn't lose much money here. They could trade back and they'd get two prospects instead of one.
Yeah, I think this comes down to like your view of this draft and like I like, is there really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, is there going to be a materially better player available for them, in their opinion, at 15 than anybody who's going to be available at 24 or 25? Or is their view that there are, I'm making up a number, 10 really worthwhile players taking a swing at in this draft, and then the next 15 are going to be 6 of one, half dozen the other? If that's their view, then this would be a great trade for them to do. If not, then probably not.
Agreed. And I think the caveat here, ultimately, if I were Daryl Morey, I wouldn't do this. Not to say it's a bad trade. I just would probably want to stick with 16, maximize the amount of money that I have, and not worry about players that are 24th to 25th. I also think that 24 and 25 for 16, there's not a lot of past precedence behind it. I don't think it'd be an unfair trade, but ultimately, I'd probably just stick with 16. But as I was going through this, I couldn't hate it. I enjoyed the creativity, even if I'm sounding vain because I came up with it. But like it does work. It's just probably not the most ideal scenario for them.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, unless you know of one, I don't think there has been a scenario where a team had back-to-back picks that they traded up, but like together in the same draft. Maybe there's one and I just don't know about it, but I feel like I've done a lot of research on the draft over the years. I don't remember.
There's close, which I will show you.
Okay.
It's not the same though, but it's not that different.
Okay. 17,
the Lakers. Seems the big question with the Lakers is how badly do they want or need to draft Bronny? Now I know that there are Knicks fans who would have thought before, or maybe still feel this way now. The Knicks should try to trade up to get Bronny and essentially do what Bill Simmons did, which was called hold him hostage.
Hostage, yes.
To try to get LeBron James. But I do not think that that is the case. Question of will the Suns draft him at 22? That's the second team that, of course, has interest in Bronny. I don't know if it's a risk that they're willing to take, though. LA's salary situation is a little clouded as well if we're talking about trading down to save money. A large part of it is because of D'Angelo Russell, his player option. If he takes it versus not, of course, LeBron James will be opting out. When he gets his max, that will add more money to the tax bill. So, it does save the money to go from 17 to 24, but it's a large drop. And what else would the Knicks have to give up is certainly the question. It'd likely have to be future draft equity, which not saying the Knicks wouldn't do that, but I don't think that going from 24 all the way to 17 is worth the cost of doing business.
We're also getting dangerously close to, and you didn't say this explicitly, but like 24 and 25 for 17 in this draft is, even in this draft, probably not great value. So it like to what you're saying is you're probably looking at something like 24 or 25 in addition to, a second or 2 seconds or something to move up.
Yep. And keep in mind as well, and we talked before about how it's 361,000 between 16 and 24 and 25. As you get further down the list, the money you're saving by packaging 24 and 25 gets smaller and smaller. And to a certain point, it actually costs you more money if you are in a certain range. So with the Lakers, we could say it saves them money, but it really doesn't save them much.
Not really.
Might be a couple 100,000, might be 100,000. I'm blanking on what the exact amount is. So I just don't see the Knicks still being able to get this far up in the draft. The Magic, they're 18th. Magic are an interesting case as well because they've got almost $50 million in cap space. They could trade, down both for 24 or 25, and it really wouldn't make much of a dent. Probably be breaking even, give or take. But does Orlando really need 2 first-round picks? I mean, when you consider their current roster and the money they have where they could make 1 to 2 signings, it doesn't seem like rostering 2 players makes a ton of sense for them. I see them really just taking 18 and running with it and then having a large amount of money to do as they please. Like perhaps D'Angelo Russell opts out and Orlando makes sense for him. I don't think that the roster spots will matter. I know they won't. The money won't really matter much, but it's one more mouth to feed where you could just kind of focus on the best player available at 18 and then just go after a free agent or 2.
Yeah, I'm just looking up. Last year, they drafted Jeff Howard with the 11th pick, and he played a grand total of... Is that right? Oh, my God. He played a grand total of 67 minutes last year.
Jet did not play a whole lot of time. That's true. And I expect him to play this year because wasting a second year, it's fine to burn through 1 year of development, but a second year that's tough.
Yeah. No, so the 2 for 1 probably does not make a lot of sense for them.
The Raptors. My question, does lightning strike twice? Because we know these 2 teams have traded 6 months ago with the OG Anunoby trade, but they are division rivals. There's still the lawsuit going on. Yep. But why is Toronto trading back? I mean, they already have the 31st pick in this draft. So my guess is if they did it, they'd want future draft capital. And maybe the Knicks do, in fact, do that. But I just don't see these teams being compatible trade partners again. With OG, it made sense because the Knicks desperately wanted him, and the Raptors knew they couldn't keep him, and they felt they got the best deal possible, and they got good value out of OG. This does not feel like good value out of the 19th pick. It's why I do not expect a trade to happen here.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about their roster. Like, unlike Orlando, they have like room to roster more rookies and actually play those rookies. Like, I don't know. I don't know what their plans are this year. Are they going to? I mean, they already gave up the pick. They could tank this year. It's just Of all of the teams that you've mentioned so far, they're the first one where I'm like, I wouldn't completely rule it out, but like for the reasons for the off court stuff, then maybe we should rule it out.
Let's think through their roster real quick, right? Assuming they make no other trades.
Sure.
I presume they'll bring back Emmanuel quickly.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now as you're talking.
Gary Trent Jr. I would expect to be back. RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl. That's 5. They're going to play Grady Dick. That's 6. Again, would presume that they will play at least one of their drafted players. You have the roster. I mean, that's just 7 right off the bat.
Yeah, just kind of.
Kelly Olynyk is there.
Yeah, well, they got to bring Olynyk. Oh no, they extended Olynyk. I forgot
They
about
did.
that.
Bruce Brown is under contract. They'll guarantee him and flip him most likely.
Yeah,
so I just don't think there's a ton of room for a 2 roster.
You might be right. They also have Agbaji, who they got in that trade. So between, I mean, I don't know if maybe they don't believe in him anymore, but between Agbaji, Quickly, Dick, Barnes, Olynyk, Poeltl, and Barrett, that's 7. Yeah, and then if you get a player for Bruce Brown, maybe they lose Gary Trent Jr. for nothing. But yeah, you know what? You might be right.
But I will say 19 for 24 in future draft capital makes more sense. And if you're Toronto, perhaps that's what you're looking for. But also, just my guess from everything we know about Masai Ujiri is that he would demand a first-round pick. And jumping from 24 to 19 does not warrant a first-round pick. That's just my hunch.
No, it certainly doesn't. I mean, it's even a stretch to say it warrants like a great second. But yeah, no, it's 24 to 19, and you throw in because the Knicks have some good seconds. I don't know, something to keep back in our mind, but probably not.
Well, something to consider, because this is really just one more pick away from this range, but this is what trading up in the back end of the first round looks like over the last 5 years. So if you start in 2019, the 20th pick turned into the 24th and 33rd pick.
Okay.
The 21st pick turned into 23 and a future second round pick.
Okay.
At least I'm pretty sure that was the case. Because that was the Grant Williams trade, and that was only moving up a couple spots. 2020. This one might look a little familiar. This was the Knicks trading 27-38, and the 23rd pick was then theirs. But then they traded the 23rd pick and got the 25th pick. And they also collected a future second round pick and draft rights to Matthias Lesort. They then moved Lesort in that same draft. 2021. The 21st pick became the 25th pick plus a future second round pick. The 30th pick, this was Aldama, I believe, became the 40th pick and 2 future second round picks. In 2022, 19 became 22 and 29. Okay. 26 became 29 and 2 future second round picks. And then finally, last year, 2023, 25, this was Sasser, became 31, it was James Nagy, and 2 future second round picks. So I'm basically highlighting all of that to say, if you're out there and you're thinking of moving 24 and 25 for anything that's like 20, 21, and I think 19 extends to it, it's an overpay.
Yeah.
It's too much. Really, with the spot that the Knicks are in to try to move up, we're talking about 1 to 2 second round picks. And not all second round picks are created equal. There are some that are great, and there are some that are terrible and may never even convert. It's finding that gap and bridging it. Yes.
We should say the Knicks have the 38th pick in this draft, so something like 24 and 38 for 19 or 20. That's more what you're talking about.
Exactly. So let's talk about the Cavaliers. They're picking 20th. Is Donovan Mitchell staying? Right? It seems like he is. And yet, right now, as we're recording this, it's 5:44 p.m. Sunday, June 23rd. John, they don't have a head coach.
No, they don't.
Like, I don't think we've spent enough time collectively talking about how outrageous it is that we are a few days away, and this will probably age like milk because they'll draft a coach as soon as this podcast
sign a
live,
coach,
sign one. Clearly in draft mode. It'd actually be easier if they could draft a coach. They'd just pick one and it wouldn't be a problem. But
they can hire your cat who's walking behind you right now.
Yeah, there we go. There's the little one. So, but it's mind-boggling to me that they have not picked a coach, and we are a few days away, and I just feel like no one's talking about this. It's just outrageous to me.
It is funny. They have reportedly been circling Borrego for a while now. But I apologize who had this report, but someone had the report in the last few days that Dan Gilbert loves listening to Tom Izzo, and Tom Izzo is apparently a big fan of Kenny Atkinson, which is perhaps part of the holdup. But the funniest thing would be is if Detroit hired away Borrego after Cleveland had their eye on him for the last month and they never hired him. Mm-hmm. Lots of funny stuff between the Cavs and the Pistons.
And also if Borrego were interviewing with the Cavs, you'd have thought it'd be done by now. So
True.
It leads me to believe that perhaps he's no longer involved in the search. Perhaps he has removed himself.
Maybe.
Why else? I don't think Detroit would be that much more of an attractive option than Cleveland. So, there was also LA. It just, either way, they don't have a coach. We don't know what they're doing. And that's where we don't understand what the trade with the pick is going to happen. What's going to happen with their pick? Are they going to make it? Are they going to trade it? Moving down to 24 would be like 500,000 in savings. Because again, as a reminder, we talked before about 24 and 25, but this is just 24.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you were saying, perhaps 24 and 38 gets you to 20. That's something that could be something of interest for a team like Cleveland. Cleveland does not have a ton of money to spend. They need talent. Is that something to be interested in? Of course, they might also be interested in future draft capital instead.
Yeah. Cleveland's roster is pretty well. I mean, we'll see what happens with trades and whatnot, but they have a lot of guys. So again, the notion that they would want to bring in multiple rookies, maybe less likely, but you never know.
Exactly. And again, 24 and 25 for 20 is far too rich.
Way too much.
Perspective. Then there's the Pelicans. So Pelicans are 21. They're reportedly looking to trade out of the draft. That's something that they have considered. I think that just from an example of the Knicks trading out of the draft with their pick is going to be difficult because it said that the Pelicans were looking for multiple seconds. But if you're picking 21st, right, and your word on the street is you're looking for future seconds to trade out, and you're 25, you're probably not thinking, hey, I can get a protected first. You're probably thinking more of, if the Pelicans are looking for future seconds and they want to trade out,
I understand what you're saying.
Probably not going to get a whole bang for my buck as well. But just worth mentioning, they don't have a second round pick until 2030. Hence why they're probably looking for future draft compensation.
I would be utterly shocked if the Knicks were able to trade either of their first round picks for a future first, regardless of the protections. Agreed. When you combine how this draft is perceived to be and again, what would teams aren't gonna it would be a top 28 protected first round pick that immediately converts to 2 seconds. Teams aren't going to tie up future firsts for that kind of trade. It's just, I just don't see it happening.
Absolutely agreed. Now, a player, of course, that has been mentioned quite a bit. We talked about him earlier. There's obvious ties and a need is Mitchell Robinson. But it's difficult to match salary for Mitchell Robinson. The only player that would really do it is Larry Nance Jr. Of course, this is for a 1-to-1 swap. Larry Nance he's a good player, doesn't quite fit what the Knicks want in their fives. The talent's there. I don't think it'd be a terrible fit. I just don't think it's who they want. Given age and yeah.
That would tell me if the Knicks, I'm not saying they would or even that they should. If the Knicks did that swap, that would tell me a lot about their willingness to divert from their MO thus far that they've had under Tibbs for 4 years now with centers, because Larry Nance Jr. he's a good player and he's a good player. He can help you on both ends in different ways, but you're right. He's not the sort of center that they've typically employed. I should know this. The Pelicans are Do they have first apron concerns? They have to have some kind of first apron concern.
Financially, they're doing okay.
They are? Okay.
They are. This is the other thing that just to mention, like you get Mitchell Robinson. It solves the center position in the sense of they have their starting center, but also they don't quite have a backup center. So what are they doing? And also, well, we know firsthand that Mitchell Robinson, not exactly a beacon of health, as we have talked about in those exact words that I'm realizing earlier in the podcast. So it also comes down to one other thing, which is if you're the Pelicans, you still need to shop Brandon Ingram in all likelihood, but now it's even more complicated. See, in my mind, what happens is that the Pelicans, who already have their wings set with Trey Murphy and with Herbert Jones. You would want to take Ingram if you're trading him, which it seems like they will because word on the street is they don't want to give him a max extension. So you're moving him. Okay, well, you've got that large, I believe, $36 million or so salary. What are you moving him for? You're not moving Zion, and you need a player that fits with Zion. We've already just talked through 3 starting rotation pieces, 3 starting players. Of course, you have CJ McCollum, who likely doesn't get moved, but he always could. The way I see it, especially with the depth that the Pelicans have with Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance Jr. and anyone else, it makes more sense for them to use Brandon Ingram to get a center. And maybe it's multiple pieces, and then that's how they do it. Like, we know that they like Jared Allen. Is it Jared Allen and adding another salary that gets Ingram to Cleveland? It's all those things where I feel like that is a more pressing priority for New Orleans than getting Mitchell Robinson in the door for New Orleans. And again, how does that come into play with the pick situation? Like, are we saying Mitchell Robinson and 24 for 21 and Larry Nance? Because that to me is poor value, because Mitchell Robinson might be hurt, but also Larry Nance doesn't stay healthy a whole lot either. And when they're both healthy, Mitchell Robinson exceeds him as a player. So I just don't see a fit if we're involving Mitchell Robinson into the fold. If we take players out of the equation, then 24 and a couple future second round picks for 21, I think that's a no-brainer for both teams. I think there's logic on both sides if the Knicks feel compelled to trade up from 24 to get someone. But involving other players, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. What say you?
Just looking at Nance's contract. Man, he signed for he's expiring.
He is.
Who is this gentleman represented by? Why don't I not know this? I'll look that up now. But he so Mitch and 24 or 25 for Nance and 21 is, I don't know, something about that doesn't pass the smell test for me. Wouldn't totally shock me. This is it's Bartlestein. Okay, well, they've done business with Bartlestein in the past. You don't like Ingram for Garland straight up?
I don't hate it. I don't know. There's a part of me that just feels like one of the biggest heels or Achilles heels for Cleveland is Mobley and Allen paired together long term.
That's fair.
So also, if you're going to move someone and Karis LeVert's up for a contract, do you really want to pay him?
Yeah, and you've kind of have stated already that you want to start both Herb Jones and Murphy, and I don't think you're moving McCollum to the bench. So I don't know, maybe you dial up Portland and inquire about DeAndre Ayton. I'm trying to think of centers who make a ton of money. I'll be curious where the Ingram thing shakes out, because it feels like, I don't know what, maybe he's destined for Philly, but I'm curious where that ends up.
So moving to the Phoenix Suns.
Yes.
Their avenues for depth, very scarce. They've been trading down trading down and picking up any assets that they have. That would be a win for them, because it means that they can fill out their roster, whether it's this year or if it were future seconds, or a future second, probably in this case, it would benefit them. We're kind of in that range now where if I'm trading from 24, giving up more than 24 and an okay future second round pick is likely too much. But the thing to consider is if you traded 24, 25, and 38 for 22, you'd save Phoenix some money off of their gargantuan tax bill because we know that's coming. So them trading down a couple spots would actually benefit them. James Jones, though, he hates second round picks, hates them, like abhors them. And we know this because the Suns haven't drafted past pick 30 since 2018 when they took Elie Okobo. I believe they took him 31st, and it did not pan out very well. And ever since, they have traded all of their seconds for this team. So it could just be that the Suns have no patience for them, and that's their philosophy, and I don't want to do it. But that's where the Suns are at. Just a mind-boggling franchise.
I would just note that there have been a couple reports in the last like week or so that the Suns are interested in some players that have also been rumored to be perhaps targets of the Knicks. So I found that interesting.
Yes. So, is there a trade scenario here? Perhaps, but I think the Suns are just committed to spending money to build a faux contender until proven otherwise. And I just don't think they're trading down.
Can the Knicks get in on, do they have any swap rights left to trade? Maybe 24 and 25 for 22 and some kind of 2031 pick swap?
Theoretically, I'd have to check, but a
31 pick swap would be on the table because they couldn't have traded away a 31 pick swap before draft night. So.
Yes, 21 goes into effect, comes into play. Yeah, so that could be.
I do that. Sign me up for
that. So 23 with the Bucks. They're right near the second apron, so trading down even one or two spots would actually benefit them. Of course, we're talking about the team that finished second in the East in the Knicks and the team that finished third in the East in the Bucks. So how much ball are they going to play with each other? Milwaukee also is the 33rd pick. So if you were to trade up, it's definitely not, trading 24, 25, and 38 because Milwaukee already has it. Do they want three rookies as well? If you were to trade 24 or 25 plus 38, then we're talking about three rookies. Don't know if that's of interest. Now, the Bucks could and probably will try to trade up from 23, adding 23 and 33. But all the teams that we just talked about, I don't see a ton of them being as interested in 23 and 33 if they were kind of shied away from 24 and 38. I understand that there's a larger difference between 33 and 38, but there also really isn't when you get to that level of talent. Like, to me, if I'm the Knicks and the Bucks are saying to another team, we'll give you 23 and 33. And I'm like, okay, well, I can offer you 24 and 38. I can also sweeten the pot if necessary by throwing in a future second or two that I know Milwaukee can't, because after 2024, the Bucks don't have a second round pick until 2031. So if the Bucks are trying to get into an arms race with the Knicks, it will not end well for them because the Knicks have more ammunition to vault them. And the same could be said of the Suns.
That all makes sense. Yeah, because the Bucks are just out of everything. I'm thinking about the Bucks because there's also reports coming out that they may want to rejigger their roster in somewhat substantial ways. So they're just like a wild card. I don't know what the hell they're gonna do.
And they could do that, right? They could make a draft day trade that involves salary. This whole thing so far does not include attaching players to the pick situation. It's too complicated. There's too much to go into with that. But you're right. Perhaps a team loves Brook Lopez and says, yeah, we'll trade down with Brook Lopez in 23 and do that. But that's a different conversation. And it's one that's out of the Knicks' control. But also, if they did that, it'd be like, now it's just a different world. The Bucks and the Knicks aren't competing for the same pool of prospects because the Bucks are likely in a different stratosphere where they're comfortable taking someone else.
Yep, makes sense.
So we get to skip 24 and 25. Don't have to wonder why. It's because the Knicks own those picks. So we'll move to 26, and that's the.
So now we're talking about trading down.
They're talking about trading down. The Wizards are in talent acquisition mode, right? They could trade up 1 to 2 spots. We know this because just last year they traded up 1 spot, right? Or no, excuse me, it was the Pacers.
It was it was Koulibaly and the power forward that's sitting on Indiana's. Yeah, Jarvis Walker were the 2 players involved in the trade. I forget who moved up and who moved down, but they were a spot apart. I know that.
Exactly. The Knicks may prefer tax savings because now the shoe's on the other foot. Maybe they want to save some money here. Unprotecting the pick, if that's where someone's mind might go, not going to be an option here. The Knicks would not be moving down to then incentivize the pick being unprotected. They don't gain anything from unprotecting this pick. The Wizards are the ones who gain everything. Also, why the Wizards would get this pick unprotected and then, or rather, sorry, it's just not going to happen. The Wizards could just tank. It doesn't benefit them. If anything, it would be, another second round pick. And maybe that's what the Knicks do. Maybe they target a future second round pick, save some money on the back end. They only move down 1 or 2 spots, depending on what they do. Not saying it won't happen. Just don't think that this is the likeliest scenario.
I agree. Just worth noting, because I'm just realizing I forgot to say it before, in the Ian Begley report, he did mention that the Wizards were the one team that he knows the Knicks have spoken to regarding Mitchell Robinson. The Wizards, we should note, currently do not employ, or would appear that they don't employ a starting caliber center on their roster. There are a bunch of centers in this draft that one of a group of like 3 or 4 guys might fall down this far to 26. I'm just thinking, is there a world where, but see, this is the tough part. It's like, if they're scared the Knicks are going to take perhaps a center that they want, well, then how badly do the Knicks really want that center that they're gonna give up the pick, and that could go for anybody, for any player. So it's an unlikely trade partner for a lot of reasons. Agreed.
And it was Koulibaly who the Wizards traded up for.
Yes, they wanted Koulibaly
and then Walker. It got complicated. I think it was a couple of picks, but it became a 3-team trade.
That's right.
Involving Bradley Beal.
And Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. These are the picks that also, if the Knicks were to trade with the Wizards, that would be of interest to me. The only reasons why you would trade down. The Suns pick in 2026, the Lakers pick in 2029, or the Warriors or Suns picks in 2030. Of course, these are all second round picks. Those are the only ones where if I'm the Knicks, I'm thinking, perhaps. But also, if I'm the Wizards, unless I really love a player and I'm terrified that the Knicks are going to trade for him, I just stand pat and keep those seconds, because at least 2 of them, you predict, will be pretty good value. And then maybe 4 of them could be. So yes, expendable, but if I am Washington, I'm using those picks in a different way than moving up 1 or 2 spots at the end of the first round.
You just made me think of it. The Wizards also do have, I'm fairly certain, some future Phoenix swap rights that could potentially be of interest to
they do.
Team.
But, and I think to go back to that grid, just to reference it, none of those picks involved swap rights.
Yeah.
So I think that swapping, like any sort of swap rights this late in the draft, probably too rich. Just based on...
Probably, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
27, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Does Minnesota really want to add to their payroll? Because, of course, trading from 27 to 24, 25 means more money in the door. We know that they already have a lot of money committed. If they do, what do they really have to move up? I mean, they currently hold pick 37, but the Knicks have 38. So unless the Knicks package, say, 24 and 38, do they really need to move from 25 to 27 and pick up 37? It doesn't strike me as a trade that makes a ton of sense for the Knicks. And again, why are the Timberwolves spending more money to move up 2 spots when there's a good chance that whatever player they draft could still be there at 27?
Unlikely trade partner.
The other thing is their most valuable pick is the 2025 Utah second round pick, because I would gather is also in the 30s. But I don't think that's. But like, exactly, if you're Minnesota, just keep that pick. Just stay where you're at. Have second round pick talent.
How did they end up with that pick? I want to go look that up.
It's a great question. I feel like it had something to do with the Gobert trade and their pick rights.
Okay.
I can't think of how that pick would have been passed around enough to getting to them.
I want to look it up.
But while you do that, I'll move on.
Keep
going. So again, I just don't think this is a likely trade for them. The Nuggets are in the same boat. Does Denver really want to add to their payroll? They have to deal with Jokic and Michael Porter Jr.'s contract. And will they retain Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? And they have Jamal Murray, who's going to need a new contract soon. And Aaron Gordon is going to need a new contract. And they've got several now second-year players. So is it enough for them to move up? I don't think so. If so, do they really have anything to move up? The answer is no. They don't have a lot of value. A lot of their second-round picks out the door or just poor value. So don't see them as a trade partner. In fact, I see them as less of a trade partner than Minnesota, who we both agree, not a good trade partner. The Jazz. Yes, sorry. Was there something you'd like?
You know what this is from?
What's that?
It's from the Mike Conley trade.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was the 3-team trade between the Jazz, Wolves, and the Lakers. So this was also Russell Westbrook was involved in this trade.
Right. It's funny they had 2 trades within the last few years, despite being division rivals.
It is funny, but that was a nice bit of business for them to get what'll be a good second round pick. Anyway, continue.
The Jazz. Speaking of
the Jazz,
I don't know. I said Wizards are in talent acquisition mode. It's clearly the Jazz. It's what copying and pasting does to you. It's the Jazz who are in talent acquisition mode. They could trade up 4 to 5 spots, of course. Knicks may prefer tax savings, as we talked about. But 4 to 5 spots, it's a far drop for the Knicks. Future second round pick situation for Utah is incredibly bleak. The only thing I can really see making sense if we're talking about the Knicks trading down with Utah. They own this 32nd pick in the draft. So we're talking 25 for 29 and 32. Makes sense if the Knicks have already packaged 38 and 24. But like if you were to say, Phoenix, here's 24 and 38, we'll take 22. And then the Knicks were to take 25 and say, we'd like to do some financial savings here, so let's trade down. They could, in theory, roster 3 rookies. I'd be surprised, but it's possible, right? They could try to two-way the player taken at 32 and then draft a player at 22 and draft a player at 29. And then it's the 2 rookies plus getting another rookie on a two-way, really not going to see much action. It's a lot of galaxy brain thinking, but the funny thing about the Knicks is they're the most galaxy brain team when it comes to the draft. They have been the most creative and also mind-boggling and also perplexing and frustrating, but also the most creative, I'll say it again, team in the NBA when it comes to the draft since this front office took over. So I wouldn't expect this, but also I don't even know what to expect from the Knicks because they fly around the draft like crazy. So I wouldn't hate this, but a lot of other pieces have to move, which I'm not saying they can't. It's just the fun of their interaction with the draft.
Can I make a fearless prediction?
Please do.
I think Lauri Markkanen gets traded this summer.
Okay. Interesting. Why is that?
I think the Jazz want to tank the shit out of this year, and they would be too good for that with Markkanen on the roster. So
do you think that even though they've tanked with him and he was great, that they can't do it again?
No, they probably could. It involved, but like, and it'll be easier to tank this year because there'll be more teams trying to win. I don't know. I think their marketing's very good and the coach is very good there. And also he's a year away from getting paid. And that's like, I don't know. Do they think Lauri Markkanen is a guy that they just want to roll out whatever that 5-year contract is going to be?
can I toss an alternate thought to you and get your thoughts
Sure.
on that? What if the Jazz don't trade Lauri Markkanen this year because, as you mentioned, expiring free agent? What if instead they use their cap space to do a renegotiate and extend?
Like Sabonis. Yeah.
Right. And then they flip him. They tank this year, and then they flip him next summer when he's got, 3-4 years on his contract. And then the team that acquires him doesn't have to worry about, will he walk? What's his value? The Jazz can still tank, and then they get to keep tanking until the protections on the Thunder pick expire, and then they get to go on their merry way.
Maybe. I don't know. I just can't shake the feeling that there's going to be a Godfather offer out there for that Ainge is going to jump on. I have literally spent about 30 seconds thinking about this, but I just wanted to.
Oh, I get it. And the easiest
throw it out there.
location or landing spot for him, and I don't think it's crazy, is Oklahoma City, right? Like they could, in theory, do it. I also feel like the most obvious place that a player goes is never the place that player actually goes, which is why I then don't think it's going to be Oklahoma City.
That's the other thing, and I'm not the first person, obviously, to mention this. The other thing about the Caruso trade is not that it makes Lou Dort expendable. Like, you want as many players like Lou Dort as possible, but like the one thing Lou Dort did not do in the playoffs this year was shoot it particularly well. And like, I don't know if he's ever going to be a guy that teams are going to guard that much in the postseason. The salaries match, so it's just worth throwing out there.
They do. And then finally, with the Celtics at 30, they have little offer the Knicks outside of the 2021 sign and trade that involved Evan Fournier coming to the Knicks. The teams haven't traded with each other since 2010. Just don't see it being in the cards. They're not the likeliest of duos to make a deal. Let's talk about trade up opportunities from 38, because the Knicks still have the 38th pick. There are a couple teams I want to highlight. First, of course, Utah Jazz at 32. They have 2 first-round picks. Perhaps the Jazz don't want to spend a lot of time and effort with dealing with the 32nd pick. Would they be interested in 38 and a future second-round pick? That's something that could be an option. Similar could be said, Portland Trailblazers. They are picking at 34. They also have 2 first-round picks. Do they also want to trade down and collect a future second-round pick? Other than that, if memory serves of the teams that are in the 30s, 31 is the Raptors, which I think that Masai, there's all this talk of Masai being able to drum up excitement for night 2 or day 2 of the draft. I don't think the Knicks are going to get in on that. Yeah, I just don't think so. The Bucks are at 33rd. Maybe that's something that could happen where it's 38 and a future second for 33, but I don't feel as confident that that does happen. But look, I don't think it's outrageous either. And then 35, I'm completely blanking on. Same with 36, and the Timberwolves are 37. But if I look at Tankathon very quickly, as we do this live on air, the full order, so 35 is the Spurs, which maybe they do, but they're in best player available mode, so they probably do it. And then 36 is Indiana, and maybe the 2 teams trade with each other after the postseason, but moving up 2 spots, it happens. The Knicks moved down from 32 to 34 and 36. They took Rokas and Miles McBride, so not the worst. There are definitely avenues there, but at the end of the day, I think they'll just stay pat at 38.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing to look at here is, again, just thinking about, okay, the Knicks may not feel they have a role for multiple rookies, is like look at the international prospects on the board in this area, because you could do a draft and stash. And again, please don't ask me a question about who any of these people are. I probably can't even pronounce their names correctly. But like just looking at Tankathon, like their 30th ranked player right now is Bobby Klintman, who's an international prospect. And then they have international prospects at 33, 35, and then again at 40. So, and then 43. So there's like some possible draft and stash candidates in this range. I don't know if the Knicks are making a trade to try to necessarily acquire one of those guys. more likely just like maybe see what shakes out at 38, but just something to think about as well.
Absolutely. Now, trading out quickly to go over that. Is there a team that's in love with a player in the late 20s who's willing to give up future first round draft capital? As we discussed, probably not. And now if the Pelicans are 21 and looking for those future second round picks, as we talked about, probably not going to help with the Knicks case. And then there's a question of, is there a starter or a star who will be available on draft night? That seems like a more likely scenario compared to certainly what we see above, of if the Knicks were to use any or both of their picks to not make one or both of them, that it would be consolidating their assets to get something better, and that it would be quantity exchanged for quality. That's essentially where I think the conversation would have to go in order for the Knicks to properly trade out while feeling like they've gotten value from that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think so here's the problem, and you've obviously we've been getting towards this throughout this cap or no cap. If nobody seems to think the Knicks want to roster 2 first round rookies, and thus they want to do something with these picks that would prevent them from having to roster 2 first round rookies, which, by the way, I'm not ruling out. Well, if you can't trade one of the picks for a future first, and as you just went through expertly, that the likelihood of them packaging 24 and 25 to move up is low, then you're only left, unless I'm missing something, with 2 options. Either you're trading one of these first round picks for a bevy of second round picks in the future, which I think is, at this point, I would probably say is the most likely option, or not most likely, is like the thing that would surprise me the least. Or alternatively, as you just said, is there a player out there that they could put one of these picks, or perhaps both of these picks, into a package to get? Because obviously you're not getting a quality or even quality-ish player you're counting on playing rotation minutes for you for the 24th or 25th pick in this draft. So you're talking about adding it to like other stuff. So like, I guess this is a long way of saying that if you can't find a trade, the likes of which we're talking about here, which is like this pick or both of these picks goes out and in some package that returns a player, then either the Knicks are going to shock us all and actually make both of these picks, or they're probably going to make a trade that returns an asset package that you're going to be underwhelmed by if you're sitting there watching. Right? Did I miss anything, or is that all?
No,
check out?
I completely agree. Those are the scenarios. And it's the sort of thing where I don't think that trading a late first for future seconds is the best value for the Knicks.
It's objectively, how could anybody say that it's a tough sell? Exactly.
And when you look at their concerns over depth, not to say that they have to go through with it, they have to take a player. Obviously, they don't want to be stuck with it, but that's where upgrading your rotation where you can, and not talking about from an added draft pick perspective, prospects, rookies. It's thinking, what can we do with the money that we have in-house to make our team better today? Because the whole goal with drafting these rookies is that you're better in the future. But day one, you want this team to be the best version of itself. This late in the draft, you're not going to find that by drafting them. You're going to find that through the trade market, through free agency, other ways.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll say, and I'm pretty sure I said this on this very podcast either last week or the week before, but that's the only reason I thought of like, hey, what if there's some batshit crazy scenario where the Knicks package like 24 or 25 with like one of their other protected picks or like multiple protected picks for a better future draft asset. But again, go find the team that wants, what's the Simmons analogy, to exchange $1 for 4 quarters or whatever that is. It's tough to find.
So let's just run through. I think I should mention Paul George, obviously, name we talked about. That's one player who I'm sure people will talk through. Let's look at common themes for the Knicks. And what I mean by that is when it comes to the prospects. Now, presumably, John, like you, I haven't spent a whole lot of time breaking down film, talking with experts.
You're not knee deep in this shit.
No, I'm really not. And I do not want to say, hey, I've spent no time on this. So here's my opinion. I trust Chris's opinion.
I was about to say
everyone else who has taken the actual time to look into these players. So what I'm going to do instead is just look at the past, not look at the current crop of prospects, but look at the past and see if there's anything we can learn from it and apply it perhaps to this draft class. So we know that of the Knicks picks, 6 out of 7 were really older than 20. I guess you could say 20 or older. The youngest player who's going to skew so much of this data is Trevor Keels. To this day, I just want to know why, right? I'm sure it had to do something with like off the court, whether it's greasing the wheels or like rubbing elbows, whatever it is.
Someone lost the card game.
Right. It had to be, or
that guy was not an NBA player.
This is going to sound mean, but it was like they pick up the phone and like, who are we going to pick? It's like, oh yeah, pick Trevor Keels. Like, oh, okay, Trevor Keels. And like, done. It's like, crap. Were you on the line? It's like, yes, I was. It's like, oh my God. But no, I'm sure there was.
What is poor Trevor Keels doing with his life? I want to look it up. Continue.
I don't know. I wish him well. It's still a confounding pick, but that's where we're at. They've mostly been not young prospects. The guards have been off the dribble threats. The guards and the forwards have all been catch and shoot threats. And offensive box plus minus has been a major indicator of what the Knicks have liked. Now, granted, this is just at the collegiate level. This rules out all of the international players and it rules out the G League players. So it's harder to get a full encompassing photo of everything. But if we take just the college players and plug it in and figure it out, right? This is what past precedence does. Most prospects taken by the Knicks achieved the following in college. Of course, the two players didn't do this, Jericho Sims, and you guessed it, Trevor Keels. They recorded an offensive box plus minus of at least 6. They attempted at least 75 threes, and they connected on at least 38% from 3. So again, tells us that the Knicks have prioritized good offensive talent that we know can shoot the ball quite well. And now there are certain indicators, right? Especially from 3, but not all threes are created equal. Not all shots are the same. You can look at someone who is merely shooting, I don't know, you could say someone shooting 42% and all they do is stand in the corner and shoot versus someone with a tougher shot diet, maybe taking more threes and having a lower percentage. So there are all these other factors to consider, but this is a list of the 2024 NCAA prospects who fit the criteria that we just mentioned. And you'll see some familiar names.
What order are they in? Because I see there's 1 to 15.
This is ranked in orders. Bart Torvik is the website, which consolidates all of this. This order is an offensive box plus minus. That's how it is sorted. So everyone has above a 6. And again, it's not rocket science in terms of like followed letter of the law, but everyone has had above 6 unless it's Jericho Sims, who's drafted 58th, and Trevor Keels, who is still a modern mystery. So
by the way, finished the year with the Iowa Wolves, which is the Minnesota Timberwolves G League affiliate. They finished with the second to worst record in the entire G League, ahead of only the G League Ignite, who is, my understanding is they are being contracted and they will no longer exist.
They are dissolving. Yes. So not great.
So congratulations, Trevor. Although he did average 15 points a game, so he has that going for him.
That's something. Look, I hope he finds his footing somewhere. It just was not in New York. So looking at this list, if you followed the draft even a little bit, there are some names that probably jump off the bat to you, right? There's Dalton Knecht. There's Reed Shepherd. Those are 2 guys well out of the Knicks range. But you could also imagine if the Knicks were in position to draft either of them, that there would be interest. But I just want to take a few of these names from players who might be in that range from this list. And I will give a special shout out to Prez for his insight, because he and I have spoken about the stuff, some of the stats that are driven here, but really figuring out which of these names is likely to be around where the Knicks are picking 24, 25. Start with Deron Holmes, the second. Just looking through synergy, it's good. Like, there's a reason why he presumably had a promise made to him and why he has removed himself from the draft workouts. Maybe the Knicks promised him, but also very possible that they did not. There are other teams that are competing in that round, other locations he might want to go. Like, he did a lot of post-up work. That's not a problem per se, but the Knicks don't really focus a lot on post-ups. He did a very good job as a P&R roll man. That's important. He cut well. He was good in transition, and the spot-up shooting was excellent. And he was also a really good offensive rebounder. Isolation too, and he could run pick and roll. The thing is, you look at his catch and shoot, he was very good, right? When he was guarded, not a great shot. When he was not guarded, he was in the 97th percentile. And he, in terms of dribble jumpers, not a great pull-up guy. Intriguing option. I think he's got a promise elsewhere, not with the Knicks, although crazier things have happened. A good player who I think the Knicks would absolutely consider, and at the 4, presumably. But I don't know if he's there for the taking or if he has been swayed in another direction.
So like you, the 90 plus percentile of my draft knowledge comes from listening to the exceptional Chris Persianen on Draft Class, and I forget who he was having the conversation with, but basically the notion that like with the Knicks, or I guess theoretically any other team, believe in Deron Holmes as a small ball 5. So again, this would represent a very much of a change of thinking for New York, if in fact that was the plan they had, if they drafted this guy. The only other thing I'll say is Dayton Flyer. So would be the second Knick draft pick out of Dayton after Obi Toppin.
Very true. And we know how that ended.
You know how that turned out. Keep getting those Dayton power forwards.
Yeah, The next is Tyler Kolek.
Here we go. Now I'm excited.
Marquette. Yes. So
he's the one guy I have a 0.1 percentile investment in, because he seems like he would be a cool guy to watch.
Yeah, and he is a great shooter. I mean, from pick and roll ball handler standpoint, he was in the 74th percentile. Spot up, 95th percentile. Transition, he did well. He was 61st percentile. Good on handoffs. Did a lot of, listed here as miscellaneous plays. He was excellent there. Isolation, did perfectly fine. 45th percentile in terms of points per possession. But looking at his shooting, right? It's that catch and shoot. 95th percentile in points per shot. When guarded, 93rd percentile. When unguarded, 86th percentile. His jumper, pretty good, 54th percentile. But his runner was the 80th percentile. And when I look at a player like this with the shot chart, I just think check, check, check for what the Knicks like in their guards. You got someone who can play off the ball. You have someone who can do something with the ball in terms of creating offense. And with the runner, we know how important that runner floater game is for how the Knicks view them. I think that Tyler Kolek could be a fantastic option. Of course, it would mean, number one, no Rokas will live. That's okay. It would also mean no Alec Burks will also live. That's fine. So will the Knicks, would they trust a point guard? Because it's probably where he would really play. Would they trust someone who's a rookie to get minutes? And now it could be like, hey, the Knicks go with a front 9 of a starting lineup with the same 5 or even a different 5. But then they also have Deuce and Hart and a center off the bench. And then presumably someone else that would get in the way of Kolek making the rotation. But it just takes one player getting into foul trouble, one injury where you call on him and he's able to provide you great production. I think he's an incredibly intriguing option. The big question, of course, as well, the Suns are interested in him. The Bucks are allegedly interested in him. If the Knicks want him, is he going to be there 24? I'm inclined to think that he will not be.
Yeah, he's one of the players that I mentioned that in regards to that Suns pick at 22. The Knicks definitely were paying attention to him throughout the year. someone who would know far better than me told me that a while back. It's just he makes so much sense. Like he's a senior, like obviously small, tries his butt off on defense. He's never gonna, not gonna be a plus on that end, but like he tries. Like what do you have to do if you're playing for Tibbs? You got to try. And then again, just listening to Chris talk about him a few times now on Draft Class, like really, really, really high level passer. So, between that and the shot, like makes a lot of sense. But we'll see. We'll see if he's there.
And this was the trading up perspective where it's like, let's say the Knicks do want him and they want to leapfrog both of the teams ahead of them. We talked about how they could probably do that with the Bucks. We talked about how they could probably do that with the Suns. This is also assuming he's even on the board at 21. There's another thought here, which is that the Knicks call up the Suns and say, hey, we have every intention, if they want him, of trading up and getting Kolek. And we know that you want him. So we're going to go ahead and we can trade him at 21. Or give you an option. We take him at 22 and you don't have him taken right in front of you and you actually get an asset out of it. This is, again, assuming the Pelicans wouldn't take him at 21. So it'd basically be saying, Phoenix, we can either jump you and take Kolek and give another team future equity draft for him, or we know he probably drops from 21. You could take that and you walk away feeling like a little bit of a winner and you get money out of it. Like you get to save money. But ultimately, I think they just would leapfrog that team.
They'd have to really like Kolek. Which again, I think they could. Yeah. If I had to place my chip on one guy that the Knicks end up with on draft night, this would be my guy.
We are pretty much in agreement. Of course, with that said, the Knicks have worked out a whole bunch of 4s.
Yep.
But so they could take a 4. There's also the possibility that it is a complete smokescreen to avoid interest in any players they might really want.
Yep.
Maybe it's Kolek. Let's talk about Baylor Shireman.
He's another guy I was happy to see on your list because, again, shout out to Chris Persianen. Yeah,
exactly. The main thing, really great on the pick and roll. I mean, he was 99th percentile. He was very good in transition, 83rd percentile. The real thing here is the spot ups, right? He was very good on catch and shoot, 77th percentile, 88th in unguarded, but 29th in guarded. But the main thing here, as I was talking with Prez, he said that truly Shireman's shooting ability is underrated compared to the numbers. Like he's truly an excellent shooter, but maybe some of these numbers don't show it. Like the runner was very good, 68th percentile. The main question to ask is if you're 24 years old, which Shireman is, and you're not dominating
almost
at
24.
A higher, right? But by the time you be there,
he's
is
like
that enough?
He's like 2 months younger than Rokas.
Yeah. But like that's the thing is this someone where should they have been doing an even better job at the collegiate level because of their advanced age? It's very good.
Yeah.
But perhaps he's more of a second round snag or extremely late first, like 30th, 29th.
You'll see.
So, I'm also pulling a couple other players here. Terrence Shannon Jr., who's available now. He fits a lot of what the Knicks would like if they wanted a wing. I mean, he was excellent in transition. 87th percentile. Very good as a spot-up player. 80th percentile. Excellent as a pick and roll ball handler. 95th percentile. Isolation. 88th percentile. That's excellent. Like you look through all the things that he does, he's a strong player. I don't know if he'll even be available at 24. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he were snatched up in the teens. But the main thing also from the Knicks perspective, not great with the catch and shoot. The runner was fine. The pull-up jumper was great. So you'd have to bank on either the pull-up jumper being legit or that the other shooting just didn't represent how you feel he could be as a shooter. Because otherwise it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but that's just what the numbers say.
I just think it's worth noting that you have just named the last 3 players you've talked about are 3 of the 4 oldest players who are either going to be taken in the first round or who seem like they are in the mix to be taken in the first round, and the fourth one is a guy I'm sure the Knicks would love to get their hands on, Devin Carter, who's a point guard prospect out of Providence, but his stock seems to be rising and seems to like he's gonna be off the board before the Knicks before the Knicks could pick, even before the range that we discussed where they might be able to trade up.
Exactly. Ajay Mitchell, this is another player, could be of interest. 6'5", Santa Barbara. Really great in terms of excellent with pick and roll ball handling, spotting up, isolation, continuously had to create his own shot because of the defense there and the lack of spacing around him. So you'd hope the spacing improves at the NBA level, and then he can do more. Of course, the defenders will be better at the NBA level than they would be at the college level. But in terms of shooting, 94th percentile catch and shoot, right? 98th when guarded, 65th percentile when unguarded. And his runner was in the 91st percentile. It was excellent. So there's definitely talent there. And it's a question of perhaps do the Knicks look at him at 38? Is he even going to be there at 38? Will he even be there at 24, 25? I don't know, but he strikes me as a good option. And then lastly, talking about Kyle Filipowski. Filipowski would fit that mold, in my opinion. I talked about this last pod, where it's like if you were the Knicks and you wanted a Naz Reid type of player, where it's like he could play a little bit of 4, he could play a little bit of the 5, but he's a little bit of a tweener. I suppose, again, I'm speaking out of turn because I'm not the draft guy. This is just my understanding of it. But I guess the way that I feel about Filipowski from an archetype standpoint is great. But when you match the stats with him, it doesn't really line up. Like my heart says he'd be a great option, but my mind says, well, he just doesn't quite pass the test that the Knicks have. It wasn't the OBPM because he did very well there, and it wasn't the attempts with 3. It was the percentage. So you'd have to really buy the shot, even though it wasn't as great. But he's a really good cutter. He spots up fine. It's nice where if you were to have a player, which the Knicks kind of do in Randall, who is not the best shooter, but you want someone to space a little bit more, that could be Filipowski. But I just don't know, right? Like catch and shoot. When guarded, he was in the 97th percentile. And when unguarded, he was in the 22nd. Pulls up well, but that's not a huge sample size. 9 runners. We know that from bigs, the Knicks also really like the fact that Hartenstein has runners. So I want to like him a lot more. Just doesn't do it at the end of the day for me.
I just find it interesting that he was like for the entire season, it seemed like he was tracking to be a lottery pick. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden in the last few weeks, it's like, oh, Filipowski could be falling, into the 20s. I don't know. I never know what to make of those situations. Like sometimes it's like you look back and like, oh, this guy never should have fallen. And other times it's like, well, there's a reason why guys were jumping ahead of him. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of buzz about him, despite the fact that he was again mocked to go in the lottery for pretty much the entire year. So again, just something to note.
Exactly. So in conclusion, as we get ready for the NBA draft, expect the unexpected. The Knicks fly up and down the boards. We really never know. I remember back in 2020 when they traded up, I joked it'd be hilarious if they traded down, thinking they'll never trade down. And then they traded down, John. So I just don't know what to make of them, right? They could trade up. They could trade down. They could trade out. They could trade in, although I don't think they'll trade in, but they could. There's just so much there. They could make a personnel move with their pick. It's all a mystery. I'd say draft someone who can shoot. That is the main thing. If you are going to draft someone who can't shoot, have them be a big man that you're really confident in. But of course, if you love Mitchell Robinson, you're thinking, I don't want them to draft a big man who can't shoot because that likely spells the end of Mitchell Robinson. Maybe it spells the end of Isaiah Hartenstein because you could find someone elsewhere, or you could, they could replace him in some way. It wouldn't be him; it'd be moving Mitch up and replacing Mitch. But I just don't think that's the case. I would be surprised. And then I'll make my predictions. I don't know if you want to make any of yours, but I'll make mine. And I'm not saying names per se. I gotta still tease something for for the episode of Cream. But these are my predictions in terms of strictly throughout the draft, right? First thing I think the Knicks are going to do is I think they're going to trade up from 24. I think they will find a player that they really like in the early 20s, and they will say, screw it. Let's do it. Let's bring this player in. And I think the other thing they'll do is they will trade out at 25. But of course, we've talked about the value trading out at 25. So is that for future second round picks, or is it for something more substantial? You'll have to find out tonight on Cream.
That's more predictions than I'm willing to make. I just want to say I'll make a prediction, but before I do that, I'll say that the one name you did not mention that I'm sure some people are at least wondering about because he's been bandied about in connection with the Knicks is Ryan Dunn at a UVA. And the reason you didn't mention his name is because you have all this data that points very clearly to the fact that the Knicks draft players who have certain abilities on the offensive end of the floor. And Ryan Dunn, I know enough about the draft to know this, that he might be the most, I don't know if unpolished is the word, but like his offensive game is like, it's not even that it's non-existent. He became apparently very hesitant over the course of the rest of this year. But at the same time, he's like one of the better defensive prospects you'll see come along. Forget this year. Like there are people who think that he's one of the better defensive prospects like they've ever evaluated. So I don't know what to make with all that. CAA did sign him for what it's worth, and he has been in to work out with the Knicks. See if that leads anywhere. For context, with Dunn, his offensive BPM, we talked about over 6 was really the threshold. His last year was 1.1. Sounds bad.
Yes. Now his defense, which is harder, I believe, to quantify with DBPM, just offenses works a little bit better in terms of it. Defense was 5.2. Outrageously good. He's an incredible defender. It's just, do you buy the shot? And that's tough.
Yeah, so we'll see. Screw it. I think they'll end up with Kolek.
That's more than I predicted, to be clear.
Yeah, I think they'll I don't know if it's going to be a 24 or 25. I don't know if they're going to trade up, but I think Kolek is a guy who fits what they look for. And he's a guy that if they draft, you're going to see him play and be like, oh yeah, this makes sense. So that will be my prediction. But I like you. Expect the unexpected. It's probably going to be a lot of stuff, and it'll be fun. We should also say again, if you want to come out and watch the draft with your friends at Knicks Film School, I will be at Penn 6 on 31st Street. We did a couple events there over the last few years. We're going to do. They're having a draft party. Former Knick Gerald Wilkins will be in attendance. We will be up in the lounge. There's going to be giveaways. There's a bar up there. Should be a fun night. So I probably will wind up getting there 7:30 or so. We'll kick things off obviously well before the draft starts at 8. And I think that's it. Jeremy, anything else from you, Jeremy?
That'll be all. Should be a fun week planned.
Yeah.
No stress whatsoever. Just easy going.
Hey, listen, it's the draft. It's fun. I love draft night, even though it's often like goes not how we think it'll go or how we maybe want it to go. I think it's always a good time.
Are you the type who stares at their phone awaiting expectations or notifications, or do you just put it away and watch the draft in peace?
Well, I remember the Deuce draft. I wasn't allowed to look on my phone because we were live streaming and I needed to be I was watching the broadcast and reacting to the broadcast. This year I'll probably be on my phone. Yeah, I think I'll be on my phone because I want to know what's going on.
So you mentioned the Deuce draft that you did that for, right?
Yes.
What did you do the next year?
I forget.
And what did you do the year after that?
I forget.
So the Deuce draft went so poorly in the experiment of you not being allowed to look at your phone, especially since they traded both of the picks, that we just decided the next year, you know what?
That's right. Now I remember the next year.
Yeah. So
you got me in trouble.
We have since gotten rid of that policy of don't look at your phone. And you're not even going to be live streaming this year. So
no, I'm not.
Yeah. Shout out we have a crew of Chris, Sean, Mensa, and Kev Words, who's a bit of a draft connoisseur himself, producer Kevin, he will be live.
That's
on our
cool.
YouTube channel on Wednesday. So
something to look forward to. So we got a lot of stuff for draft. Check Jeremy out tonight for Cream. I will have a new pod dropping with a very enjoyable and familiar guest in a few days. And and keep an eye on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel and our social media feeds, because I think we're going to be trying something out starting today, actually Monday, and we'll see how it works. So just keep your eyes peeled on that, and then we'll be back with more. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. This was exceptional as always.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank everybody out there. If you don't like what the Knicks do on draft night, don't get mad at Jeremy. That's all I have to say. All right, have a great week. We'll talk to you later.